Welcome to the Chronicles of the Christian Drama Queen podcast. I'm your host and the original Christian Drama Queen, Lisa Schaefer, and I'm glad that you are here today. Today's episode's a little bit different. Today we're going to talk a little bit about my journey at homeschooling. This is actually going to be an interview that was done many months ago by the Christian homeschool mom, Eve Owens. In fact, Eve is in Ireland, and so we really enjoyed getting to know each other. Anyway, stick around, guys, if you want to know more about my journey homeschooling my kids for 25 years. Here we go.
Lisa, thanks for helping me. I've been having problem here with audio and technical stuff that I'm not really used to, but I have Lisa to the rescue, and she's here as well to encourage us and to share us her story, how God led her to homeschool her children. So, Lisa, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm thrilled to be here. I've been, as I've been working in the ministry that I've been working in for the last year, I've gotten to meet so many great people, and God is so good to just bring them to me. And so you're one of those. So I'm really grateful that you and I have become friends just so quickly. It's interesting. The Spirit of God working between people is just so much fun. And so I'm really excited. Wow. So I'll introduce myself. That's just real quickly.
Please, yes.
I am Lisa Schaefer. I operate a ministry in the States called ChristianDramaQueen Solutions, where I facilitate freedom for victims of abuse and abandonment and just help them walk through God's word to get from a place of feeling unloved and bitter to a place of knowing they are loved and finding forgiveness. That ministry is relatively new, but before that, for 25 years, I homeschooled 3 lovely, beautiful adopted babies from baby time to adulthood. So they all graduated high school with me. We started homeschooling. My oldest was born in 92. So we began preschool with him when he was almost 5. And interestingly enough, our belief has always been that we're constantly learning and schooling. Our kids were already being homeschooled well before we were calling it school. We were teaching them to tie their shoes and what letters and shapes and colors all looked like and how to use the things around them in the world. And that's all education. Everything that you do with them in any setting, whether it's home or social, is education. And so we began to really school the kids from birth. We have always felt like home education is just living life with your kids. So very early on, we decided to homeschool them. And in the state, I live in the state of Kansas.
Yeah.
In the state of Kansas, the laws are pretty relaxed regarding home education. So we were able to start by simply sending a form to the state telling them we were going to operate as a non-accredited a private school. So that's what home education is in Kansas. It's a non-accredited private school. And so we named our school and we began to use a multitude of different kinds of curriculum. Our goal when we started was just to simply be able to do a couple of things. We wanted to be able to teach Bible history as a part of human history. It was not a fairy tale. It was not just some sort of book of fantasies that somebody, says did or didn't happen. History proves the word of God to be accurate. And so we wanted to be able to teach that in the regular education topics. We wanted to teach it in sociology and in science and even in mathematics and all of that. So that was part of the reason that we started a homeschool. The other part of the reason was we felt God was calling us to it. The education system in our country, and this is as humbly submitted as I can after homeschooling 25 years and being almost 60 years old myself, being a product of the public school system myself. I never felt that public education allows children to follow their bent, meaning if they are leaning toward something that they love as a career, as a mission in life, or as a calling, the public education system is cookie cutter. It means
Yeah.
everybody gets the same chunk of stuff.
Yes.
And it doesn't give them the freedom to follow their heart or to follow their desires or their passions when it comes to education. There were times when my oldest, especially when we were still feeling our way through this whole education at home thing, my oldest fell in love with World War II aeronautics. And so in a public school setting, he would have been forced to quit looking into that after we did all of the tests that were required for World War II and aeronautics. But for him, what we did was we allowed him to just go as far as he wanted. So he watched videos and movies and learned things and read books. We had scads of books from our library in our living room. Do you guys use the word scads? Just massive amount.
Yeah, we say that we have loads
of books. It was the most fun thing for the kids to go to the library and just run. I mean, we just made ourselves very comfortable and shopped for books. And if I knew I was going to be teaching lessons on World War II or aeronautics or whatever, I actually checked out books that were over his head, that were over his age range, because they provided opportunity for him to investigate more vocabulary and more science. Right. So I didn't just keep them in a box where they could only learn at the fourth grade level when they were fourth grade level. I allowed them to explore that. So having the freedom to let my children follow their passions and their bent. My daughter loved animals. She was very interested in animal biology at a very early age. She's 30. She's still looking at books about animals. I wanted them to have the freedom to fall in love with learning. And there's not a way to do that in most public education settings. You got to do what everybody else is doing.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
a scope and sequence designed for you to do that year. And that's where you stay. You stay in your lane, so to speak. So I was never comfortable with that idea of just doing what everybody else was doing.
And you have seen the benefits of homeschooling your children.
I have. And I'm not going to tell you that we did everything perfect. I mean, I'm writing books about rebellion. So everybody has, every child goes through those phases. But I will tell you, they're still interested in learning. And they're 32, 30, and 26. They're still interested in becoming more knowledgeable in the things. And my goal was always, if I didn't teach them everything, I was certainly going to teach them how to love looking for it. Yes. That's what I wanted for them. It's really not about filling a bucket. My friend Steve Lambert with 5 in a Row Publishing says, it's not about filling a bucket with information. It's more about lighting a fire and letting it burn in them. So that was one of the reasons that we decided to home educate. The other reason was we wanted to be able to control the socialization that our kids were going to get. Now, there is a huge argument against home education regarding socialization.
Yes.
Which is an absolute myth. The whole idea that they're not going to get enough socialization because they're not in a public school setting is just, in America, we say it's just garbage. It's garbage. It's not true.
We say it's rubbish.
It's rubbish.
And I've heard it many times here. How do they socialize? So what do you say on that?
So here's my argument for home education in the category of socialization. It's not that they don't socialize. It's that I have some control over how much and whom they socialize with. And some people would say, well, that seems kind of, controlling. Well, I am their parent. It is supposed to be controlled a little bit. And so we got involved in home education groups. We didn't have Zoom technology or computer FaceTiming or any of that when I was homeschooling. In fact, that is, just since COVID did we decide to start depending upon FaceTime and facial meetings. When we started home education, we didn't have access to that, but we did have access to church groups and we did have access to if anywhere you're at, if you are in a setting where you decide to homeschool and you don't have a lot of people around you that are also homeschooling, I would say start your own group and start
Yes.
reaching out online to find other families. At the time when we started, we were living in Wichita, which is a large metropolitan area in Kansas. They have about 400,000 people. That population is pretty good size for Kansas. So we were able to find lots of people that were also homeschooling and have social events with them. A huge chunk of our church group, church family was homeschooling. So those became our kids' best friends, just like kids in regular school. They had best friends at church, and they did everything together. They roller skated at events. We had field trips together. We did all of those things. So if you don't have that to access, I would say make sure that you get it. Now, I want to shift gears just a little bit because I think it's real important for people who are just considering the idea of homeschooling to understand a couple of things. Okay.
Yes.
First of all, you can do it. You don't have to be a licensed teacher to know how to teach your kids. If you taught them how to tie their shoes, or if you taught them how to run the bathtub with the right kind of cold and right kind of warm water, if you taught them how to get dressed in the morning, how to eat at the table with some manners. And so I wasn't always good at that. Excuse me. I wasn't always very good at etiquette, but I've tried harder at, with my grandkids, I try a little harder to teach etiquette. But you can do it. Okay. And I think that there's this idea that God created parents and God created teachers. And the truth of the matter is God created teachers who are parents. And you can educate your kids at home. And with the resources available now, I just can't imagine even struggling with that as a whether or not I can and can't do it thing. I just know with the resources. So you can do it.
I believe you're right. Yeah, because with the resources now, loads of information compared to your time and compared to the time, let's say in the 70s. I've seen some people even started to homeschool when it was illegal in US to homeschool, but they fought for their children. So now there's like loads of information out there. Right.
When we started homeschooling, it was just let's see, would have been 96, probably 1996. Oh my goodness, that was a long time ago. I've got to absorb that for just a second. Okay.
I just graduated my high school at that time.
Okay, now you're just being mean. So
I'm just joking.
But
we can learn a lot from you.
Yeah. I've been there, right?
Lots of wisdom.
Our pastor and his wife were homeschooling when we started going to church there in 1988. I thought they were breaking the law. I thought, man, you're not supposed to have your kids at home. I had no idea there was such a thing as home education. And it was actually watching them and listening to what they were saying, which was, you have the freedom to keep your children at home and educate your kids. It's just that the law had not there was no law saying that they couldn't. There just wasn't a law in place that said they could. And so in our state, what we learned, what we were able to do was just make sure that we filed as a non-accredited homeschool. Now, all that really means is that the state does not have to recognize your private education as an accredited education. However, what we are finding and what we have found for the last 2 decades or the last 20 years is that colleges are actively recruiting homeschoolers who have graduated as home educated kids. And I think the reason for that is that proof in the pudding, so to speak. The proof is that they are as well, if not better educated, that they are natural leaders, or that they've been taught leadership skills, because in many situations, some of these kids who have graduated as a home educated student, they're the oldest. If they're the oldest, they've tended to have to be the leader with their siblings. And so they've learned some leadership skills just by way of being the oldest kid, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not that it was illegal, there was no law addressing it. And so when we first started, there were just a couple of curriculums to choose. One was a private school curriculum, and one was a homeschool curriculum that was used in private schools. And
Yeah.
that's really all we had available when we first got started. But within the first few years of home educating our kids, we were going to conventions where there were hundreds of vendors offering home education tools and curriculum. I tend to be a very eclectic homeschooler in that if I find something I like in science, it may not match the curriculum in history. But
Yeah.
that was what we chose. And all three of my kids have very different home education styles. One of them is a love to read it, love to learn it from a book kind of person. The other one, hands-on all the way, all the time, any way we could. And then one is a discussion-based education. She's got dyslexia. And so it was much harder for her to do book learning, what we call book learning, textbooking and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
we could talk. She knew more about the Great Wall of China when she was 4 than most high schoolers know,
Yeah.
because we discussed it, and she retained what we discussed. So you can tailor, one of the advantages is that you can tailor your education to the style of learning that your child responds to the best. That's what we did. So
That is true because every child is unique. I have 5 children, and I have seen the oldest is different. She's very good. Give her instruction and she can just follow through it. She'll fly through it. While the other one, you need to kind of like more time to guide him. So because every child is different, they're totally unique, but it doesn't mean that the other one is better than the other. It's just 2 different creatures.
absolutely.
So,
And
as a parent, I think it's very good for you to encourage the other moms so that they are the one that knows their child better.
exactly. No one knows your kid like you do. No one knows your kid like you do. And so you can tailor whatever it is that you're learning to the style. The other nice thing about homeschooling is I had a 4th grader and a 2nd grader and a preschooler all at the same time. And guess what? We all studied the same stuff. We read the same books together. I worked on different activities for them based on their age, but for the most part, my 4th grader, my 2nd grader were learning pretty much the same things, except of course math skills and spelling skills. Those are things that are very textbooky. But as far as learning things in history and science things, they were pretty well learning at the same rate. I think it's real important for moms to know that they can do it, that they know their kids better than anybody, to find out what the laws are. We don't just jump in without knowing. We do some due diligence and make sure that we're prepared. I don't know what's happening where you are, but where we
In
are.
Ireland here, it is legal. It's in Article 42.2. It's legal for us to homeschool our children. So, but what the government does, there is a department for children here. It's called TUSLA. So we submit the form and we basically register them that they are not attending the public school, but we are basically giving them home education. And what the government would do is they would send, they call it an assessor, to come to your home.
Social services is what we call it here.
Okay, so the lady that was here, actually, I just had her September. So she just went through what are our curriculum, so just to check. And then I got a letter from them that, so they are basically keeping my 3 children in their register as home educators.
In some states in the U.S., standardized testing is required. And the Homeschool Legal Defense Association here in the country, which we tell everybody to become a member of Homeschool Legal Defense, because that way, if the government ever, if the social worker ever comes to your door and says, look, your kids are truant because you're not sending them to school, or because we don't think you're educating them the way we think you should, we're going to take them from you until we get this legally figured out. Homeschool Legal Defense will jump if you pay to be a member, and it's not a lot. If you pay to be a member, they just give the phone number to the social worker, have them call us. We will represent you and make sure that, there are attorneys in each state that represent Homeschool Legal Defense.
Yes.
And they will jump in on your behalf. Some states require standardized testing. And I think a lot of homeschoolers are battling that, where they feel like, you know what, we're not home educating our kids so that they can live up to your standard.
Yes.
We're home educating them to live up to the standard we have established. And so, like I said, we're a non-accredited private school in Kansas. We never did any standardized testing, but we did want them to have numbers to represent what they had learned. So when they were juniors, if they wanted to, about 16, 17 years of age, when they were juniors in high school, we told them, we thought you need to take your ACT or your SAT, which is the test that they used in colleges to determine if you've learned anything, if you can get in. And so we encouraged them to do that. My oldest did it. He, scored well and was recruited by a local college. Our other two kids didn't want to do it. They didn't care. One of them wants to be a chef. And the other one wants to work with animals, but she didn't want to go to college to do it. She wants to work on a farm. So they could choose by then. There are ways to apply for college without having to take standardized testing.
Yes.
And the other part of that is simply to keep a transcript. If you're going to home educate, either journal for each child what they've done each day, or follow the curriculum and use that scope and sequence in each curriculum to determine what they've learned. There's your transcript. And so we just provided that when they were ready to do extended education. My daughter wanted to be a CNA, certified nurse's assistant. And so we provided her transcript to the college that she had to go to take that course. They didn't even ask they didn't ask where the homeschool was or any of that. They didn't ask for any of that.
Yeah.
And for people that are afraid, well, what about a diploma? Don't you need to have a diploma? Something that shows you went to school. Nobody's ever asked for mine. I've worked in several different places. Anybody asked for your diploma? No, nobody ever.
Even I myself, I work so hard to get this degree, hoping you'll get a better job,
Yeah.
In the Philippines, they ask for a transcript. But when I came over here in Ireland and I applied for a job, they didn't even ask me for a transcript or a diploma, and I had it.
No. In the U.S., home education has so exploded. And one of the things that helped us, believe it or not, was COVID. We realized when we had to, we could home educate our kids and keep them home. One of the schools local to me, I work in the leadership committee in our county, and I work very closely with superintendents of schools.
Yes.
And they are some passionate, children-loving people. I mean, I have learned a lot about those educators and where their heart lies. Okay. I think there's some misdirection and misunderstanding about what it is that homeschool families are trying to do. Our public school teachers and administrators are realizing we need to offer something to these home educators so that we can encourage them to be a part of the system. Now, I'm not going to talk politics, even though today's election day in the United States. I'm just telling you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big day. You know what? I haven't. My husband and I make it a date. We go together as soon as he gets off work. We've always done that. So we will. This is a very big election. But from a political perspective, I know that administrators, school systems get money from the government for every child that they bring into the system. The home education movement has taken money out of public education because our children are not enrolled. So a lot of public educators are going, okay, how do we get these kids back in? And people worry about things like physical education, PE, art, music, choir, band. I mean, all of those humanities things. And a lot of families are concerned, I can't teach my child to play the piano, or I can't teach them how to draw. So a lot of public schools in the States are now offering home educators a few hours a day. Bring your kid just for art and choir and band.
That's nice.
And so we have some options in many states now where public educators are offering things to home educators. But if you're in a large area, chances are someone in your homeschool group knows how to teach piano, or knows how to teach trombone, or knows how to show you how to do perspective drawing. We were part of what we call a co-op, where all these families would come to classes together, and the moms who had education to teach some things would do it. We had an algebra teacher. We had a gal in our group that was really good at math, and she was great to teach algebra. We had a nurse in our homeschool group, and she taught anatomy and physiology to our kids when they were in sophomore, junior year, which is really early. Anatomy and physiology is very early. I taught perspective drawing and choir. So those are because I was a performing arts major. So so you have some resources to tap into, but it is up to you, mom and dad, to tap into that, to try and find those connections so that you can make something work for your family. And some families don't. My son was playing the piano. He still does, plays by ear. It's crazy that he's got that ability. We went to see a movie and we came home and he's playing the theme song on the piano. He was
Oh,
like four,
fantastic.
he was like 14. Now he's a rapper. That was part of the educating them toward their bent. If they love music, find a way for them to have access to it. If they don't, why do they need to take it? So you get to make some of those decisions, but you've got to feel out the circle that you're in and find those resources. And now, like we were talking, with technology being what it is, you can get tutoring from YouTube or people online pretty easily anymore. It's phenomenal to me.
It's one of the advantage. Yeah, we're following a curriculum, but we're having a hard time with math, right? And I'll be honest with you, it's not my favorite subject either. So we have to go like to YouTube and find out, okay, let's see if we can find someone there that could actually teach that.
It's not odd for the parents to help find answers on YouTube tutorials for their kids, even if they're in public school. That's a pretty normal thing now. That's why those guys are all making money with AdSense on their YouTube channels, because they're offering these little simple 2 or 3 minute videos to explain concepts like dividing decimal numbers. Yeah. So you have the tools. It's amazing to me the kind of tools that parents have now that we just didn't have access to. We were just kicking football into the wind. We didn't know what we were going to do to find the resources that we needed. Moms and dads can do it. They can do it. I will say that dads kind of need to let go of the purse strings. I know that sometimes they get concerned about wives spending money on home education, and there is some money to invest on a lot of times on curriculum and resources and those kinds of things. And parents have to be on the same page. I will tell you, as a wife and mother and grandmother, if your spouse is not supportive of the idea of you home educating, it's going to be tough. It's tough. I can't even put it into words. It would be very, very tough. Of all the things that I've learned, because for many years I tried to kind of fit myself as a homeschooler into the same mold that all the other homeschool moms were in. There was a certain way we had to look. There was a certain modesty we had to put off. There were certain behaviors that were expected from our kids. Even homeschoolers have cliques where they expect people to act in a certain way. And it wasn't until my kids had gotten older and I realized how far from that image or that idea. Comparison is the death of contentment. If you are comparing what you and your family decide to do as a school, as a family, to what other people are doing, you're going to be really hard on yourself. You're going to establish a standard and require things from your kids that they cannot possibly live up to because they don't understand why you're comparing them to other kids.
Especially if you're just new in the journey of homeschooling.
You have to decide.
You need to give grace to yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I remember when I started homeschooling, when my husband told me, honey, you need to stop working. And I was one of those that would never homeschool. Mm-hmm. So I really fought that thing. You need grace, especially on that. So if you're comparing, you won't start.
To be quite honest with you, when we compare ourselves to other humans, and that's the standard, we're going to be significantly disappointed. First of all, you're only seeing the front porch of the house. When you see what other people are doing with their kids, I used to do this with Facebook all the time. You'd see a family that was doing great things with their kids and making things and doing crafts and all of these fantastic things. And one of their kids got accepted to Harvard or whatever. We'd look at that and we'd go, well, why isn't that happening in my house? Because those are not your kids. That is not your family. Yes. And you are maybe not called to do the things that they do. But on top of that, you're only seeing the front porch. When people show you what's going on with them, they're not going to show you the mudroom where all the laundry's getting stacked up and the windows haven't been washed. They're going to show you that pretty front porch with all the flower pots and the swing and the decorations. That's exactly what we do in homeschooling. We brag about the great stuff. We don't let people know we're struggling with algebra. We brag about the fun stuff we're doing and the field trips that we're taking and the times when our oldest is getting along really well with the 2-year-old. But we don't show everybody the hard days when I can't even get anybody to sit down and listen to me. So you've got to give yourself a lot of grace and just don't compare what God is doing with you and your kids with what he's doing in somebody else's life. It's not your life it's not their life that matters in your school setting, in your family. It's your life. It's your family. So I encourage people, write that down. Comparison is the death of contentment, and put it where you see it all the time, because we find ourselves doing that. Homeschoolers do that and we even compare. One of the reasons we don't start homeschooling, even when we feel like God's calling us to do that. And I compare it in my country. I honestly, especially in some of the areas of education that are being taught right now, it's a rescue. You're on a rescue mission. You're going to develop those arrows in the quiver. And the only way to do that is to have them in the quiver, right? You cannot have them shot all over the planet and expect them to be usable. And so in many cases now, and like I said, my kids have been graduated for, 10, 12, 14 years. It's gotten so much worse. What they're teaching in especially in large cities has gotten so much worse than what we were up against. We were up against some false history. We were not up against so many immoral choices that they are teaching in school to be calling it education. So if you're feeling called to educate your kids, and it's a rescue mission, and you know that it's a rescue mission, then God will equip you to do it. He will give you all that you need to do it. And by the way, lots of scholars, lawyers, government officials, leaders were not publicly educated. If you look throughout history, in my own country, they were not educated in a classroom with 42 kids and all learning cooking cutter. You know what they did? They read.
Yes.
They were well read. And I contend, aside from math skills, if you are well read, you probably don't need to have a professional public education in any other subject, but maybe math. So, I mean, that's my personal, people look at me and go, what, are you crazy? I think if you're well read, you might be surprised at what you're learning from reading. And great readers become great writers. That's just kind of the way it works. So.
Amen. Thank you, Lisa. And it's actually good to know that when you know you can't do it, that's actually the time that I've realized myself. This is the time that I really more dependent on God, because it is not your might nor your strength. That's why the scripture says that, not by might nor by power, but by his spirit. So when his spirit is in you, when Paul said that his spirit is in him, he said, I can do all things, not by myself, but through Christ who strengthens me.
Absolutely. Understand your weakness, because in your imperfection, God's made perfect in you. And that is exactly the tool right there, is that reliance upon God.
Yes.
And some days I would try to make my kids fit into my plan, and I would feel the Spirit of God say, you guys need to take a day off. And we would walk out the door and go out into the yard and lay on a blanket and read books and chase butterflies and chickens. We had chickens back then. And life was different that day than what the plan was. It was great. And I can't imagine missing out on that stuff with my kids, because I wanted to stick to a school plan.
Yes.
So I highly encourage people to value the time that they'll have with their kids, and understand, if you're called to it, he'll equip you to do it. He will. And I guess that's going to do it for me today, guys. Thanks for joining me today on the Chronicles of the Christian Drama Queen podcast. I am your host, Lisa Schaefer. There are lots of ways to find me on social media. Of course, I'm on Facebook, and I'm also available on YouTube. I have my own YouTube channel. It's called Christian Drama Queen. You can go check out the videos of these podcasts right there on that YouTube channel. There's a website that you can go to just find out a little bit more about me. It's ChristianDramaQueen.com, and you can always email me, same place, Lisa@ChristianDramaQueen.com. Don't forget to share me with a friend, guys. Like me, shoot me some hearts, fill out those comments, make sure that you've given me a rating or a review of some sort, because listen, the only way that other people find out we're here is for you to let them know that I'm here. And listen, we not only appreciate that, we really believe that God's going to use it. And I love you.